Ronan Vale adjusted the stiff collar of his ambassadorial coat for the sixth time in as many minutes. The heavy, humid air inside the floating Sky City's central embassy clung to his skin, and the constant buzz of the overhead lumistrips did nothing for his headache. The summit had been billed as a once-in-a-generation peace effort, an ambitious accord between Earth's fractured syndicates and the elusive, tribal cultures of the feline kin from Ilaris. But from what Ronan had seen so far, it was unraveling faster than a cheap orbital suit in reentry. He hadn't even been supposed to be here. A week ago, the appointed envoy from Earth's Concord of Syndicates, Ambassador Delrin, had come down with a sudden, violent illness the night before departure. Ronan, a decorated conflict negotiator with a background in insurgent deterrence, had been tapped as a last-minute replacement. The logic was clear: if talks went sideways, they needed someone who wouldn't panic. What no one mentioned was that it might also involve being seated directly across from a humanoid feline woman who looked like she could flatten an armored convoy with a single swipe. Her name, according to the official summit roster, was Sayla. No surname. Just Sayla. She was an emissary of the Ellerin clans, a representative of a people whose customs remained more mystery than fact to most of the human world. She stood a few inches taller than him, draped in a flowing mantle of deep purple cloth that shimmered with nanoweave embroidery. Her fur was a soft steel gray, short and immaculate, glinting faintly beneath the recessed lighting. Slender but powerful, her limbs moved with the taut grace of a predator conserving energy. Her feline ears twitched at every diplomatic whisper in the chamber, and her golden eyes, pupils thin as knives, seemed to watch everything. She had barely spoken in the first hour of the summit. But when she did, it was with a clarity that pierced through every layered falsehood offered by the Concord delegates. "You delay sustenance shipments to Ellerin Outer Holdings," she said coldly, her voice smooth but sharp-edged, like velvet drawn over a blade. "Was this part of the agreement, or are humans only generous in theory?" Ronan hadn't been briefed on much, thanks Delrin, but he'd seen enough field intel to know there had been disruptions. He leaned forward, folding his hands carefully on the table's obsidian surface, and met her gaze without flinching. "There were delays," he said. "But not deception. The shipments were waylaid due to sabotage, on both sides. We have reports, timestamps, logs. I can present them to you directly." Her upper lip curled. Not quite a snarl. "Not yet. You speak with data," she said. "But data lies when twisted by fear." Before he could respond, she rose from her seat in a fluid motion that rippled through the room like a live wire. Her claws clicked audibly on the tabletop as she leaned forward, her face inches from his, amber eyes burning. "Do not insult me with bureaucratic excuses, Ronan Vale." He stood slowly, carefully. His hands remained visible, open, non-threatening. "I don't insult," he said. "I negotiate. And I don't intend to let either of us walk out of here with blood on our hands." For one tense heartbeat, the room stilled. And then, like lightning, Sayla moved. The strike wasn't violent. It wasn't the savage mauling the room expected. Sayla's movement was fast, too fast for the human eye to follow cleanly. Her mouth found Ronan's shoulder in a precise bite, her fangs sinking through the fabric of his diplomatic coat, and just enough into flesh to draw blood. A clean puncture. A mark. Ronan staggered back, eyes wide, hand instinctively clapping over the searing pain in his shoulder. He didn't cry out, but his heart pounded in his ears. Shouts broke out on both sides of the chamber. Concord's security lurched to attention. Ellerin elders rose from their seats, claws twitching. Several even hissed. The air bristled with chaos. Sayla stood frozen. Her lips were stained with a single smear of red. But she didn't look proud, or even angry. She looked stunned. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. Her eyes weren't those of a predator basking in a strike, they were wide, uncertain, almost horrified. Then she whispered something in the Ellerin tongue. Just one word. A ripple of gasps moved through the Ellerin delegates like a tremor. One of them, a frail, spotted elder, slumped in their seat in shock. Another let out a keening breath that sounded like reverence and fear combined. Ronan, still gripping his shoulder, looked around the chamber in confusion. "What the hell just happened?" he asked, his voice tight. One of his aides began drawing a sidearm, but Sayla raised a single hand without turning. It was not a command. It was a plea. The aide hesitated. Sayla spoke again, quieter now, barely audible across the chamber. "I invoke the Viethrel," she said. "The Hartfang right. It was not conscious. Not intentional." Ronan blinked. "The what?" She looked at him then, really looked at him. Her voice wavered, but it carried across the hall. "You're mine now," she said. "Bound. Life-linked." Silence slammed down like a dropped hammer. Even the translation bots paused their whispering as if they, too, needed a moment to buffer what she had just said. "You bit me," Ronan said slowly, as if trying to unpack each word. "And now you're saying I'm your, what? Mate?" The term landed like a detonation. Several Concord delegates cursed under their breath. The head of the diplomatic committee shouted for a medical withdrawal. Sayla's own council began barking rapid orders, arguing among themselves in layered dialects. Ronan just stood there, blood running warm under his fingers, trying to process what had just upended the entire negotiation. He hadn't just been bitten. He had been claimed. The med bay was sterile, white, and humming with low-grade lighting that didn't help the pounding behind Ronan's eyes. He sat shirtless on the edge of a diagnostic bench while a medic worked silently to clean the wound. The bite mark wasn't deep, but it was precise, 2 curved punctures where Sayla's canines had entered his shoulder. It throbbed with heat. Not infection. Something else. "She broke skin," the medic muttered, dabbing on a dermal synth. "But just barely. Bite matched Eller ritual patterns if that helps." "It doesn't," Ronan replied flatly. Outside the bay window, he could see the conference level descending into chaos. Delegates were pacing. Security was doubled. At least 2 aides were in shouting matches with their supervisors, and a Concord drone had already posted a neutral press release titled, "Unexpected cultural gesture halts peace talks." Unexpected. That was one way to put it. The doors hissed open and Chancellor Trell, Concord's acting lead on diplomacy, stormed in. A tall woman with silver-streaked hair and a face like carved marble, she wasted no time. "You've sparked a diplomatic meltdown," she snapped. "Do you have any idea what this bond means to their people?" "I didn't exactly sign up for this," Ronan replied, wincing as the synth sealed over the wound. "She moved. I didn't step back." Trell ran a hand down her face. "The Ellerin Council now insists on honoring the right. They're calling it sacred. The elders say denying the bond would be like denying an oath made before their gods. If we refuse, the summit falls apart." Ronan stood slowly, grabbing his coat but not putting it on. His shoulder still burned. "So what, I pretend to be her partner now? Smile for the cameras and play pet diplomat?" "You don't have to marry her," Trell said. "Just cooperate. Let the public believe we're observing the right out of respect. We need time to find a way out of this." "And where is she?" he asked. "My mate." Trell hesitated. "Already moved into a neutral living suite on the east side of the embassy. Ellerin tradition requires cohabitation following the Hartfang. We've placed monitors. Nothing expected of you but presence." Ronan exhaled. "Presence. Right. And if she bites again?" Trell's lips twitched grimly. "Then I suggest you bite back." The east wing of the embassy was different, designed with Ellerin comfort in mind. Ronan noticed it immediately. The walls weren't flat but curved in gentle arcs, lit by natural twilight tones rather than sterile white. The floor was padded with a weave that absorbed footfalls, and the air smelled faintly of smoke and wild herbs. It was like stepping out of a government facility and into someone's ancestral memory. He was escorted to the suite by a pair of guards who said nothing as the door opened with a soft chime. Sayla stood near a tall window that overlooked the storm-lit skies of Alaris. Her back was straight, arms crossed beneath her mantle, her long gray tail flicking in slow, restless movements. The fur along her shoulders caught the light like brushed metal. She didn't turn when he entered. "So," Ronan said, trying for neutral. "Roommates." Her ears twitched, but she didn't move. "I didn't mean to choose you," she said after a long silence. "Could have fooled me," he muttered. Now she turned. Her eyes locked with his, golden and intense, but not angry. "It wasn't conscious. The bite, our instincts act before thought when provoked or challenged. I believed you were mocking me, like so many of your kind do. I reacted. And now? Now it is done." Ronan crossed the room and sat on a low stone bench, resting his hands on his knees. "What does it mean, this bond? Aside from causing a diplomatic mess." Selah crouched beside him, her movements silent. Her claws did not extend, but they glinted from the ends of her fingers, more natural than threatening. "I will not demand more than what your people already expect," she said. "But while we share this space, I will protect you. That is what the Heartfang demands." He studied her face. The fine gray fur, the feline grace that somehow coexisted with very human expressions. She wasn't posturing anymore. She was tense. Maybe even regretful. "And you can't undo it?" Her ears flattened slightly. "Our hearts only choose once." The silence stretched between them like a tightrope. Ronan let out a slow breath and extended a hand, not for shaking, but as a gesture of truce. "We play this smart," he said. "Keep the summit alive. Keep the peace. Figure out who wants this to fall apart." Selah's clawed hand closed over his, gentle, careful. "And if anyone tries to harm you again," she said softly, "they'll meet more than just my instincts." The following 48 hours passed in a haze of formalities and tightly controlled optics. Ronan and Selah became the unintentional face of the summit's fragile unity. Their meals were scheduled. Their routes were choreographed. Every glance between them in public was interpreted and dissected by both sides. Were they distant? Were they warming? Was there tension? Was it real? The news feeds across 3 systems were filled with variations of the same story, bitten by peace, bound by instinct. Some networks ran it as romantic. Others as scandal. A few conspiracy theorists even claimed Ronan had orchestrated the entire thing to rise through the Concord ranks. He tried to ignore it. Tried. Inside their shared quarters, things were calmer, but not exactly comfortable. They spoke when necessary, reviewed briefs side by side in silence, and took turns using the suite's limited facilities. There was a rhythm forming, not trust, not yet, but a kind of measured coexistence. Still, there were moments. Once, in the quiet dark of the early morning cycle, he found himself awake on the couch, listening to her breathe. There was a rhythm to it. Soft, almost feline, but deeper. Centering. Like her body never truly relaxed, even in sleep. And sometimes, in those rare moments between briefings and staged appearances, he caught her watching him. Not with suspicion. Not even curiosity. Just watching. As if she was trying to understand something she hadn't meant to feel. It was during one of their diplomatic prep meetings that the first ripple hit. Ronan sat beside Selah as a trade liaison droned on about proposed resource shares. The lights flickered, just briefly, and the display behind the liaison glitched, showing symbols instead of data. Selah was on her feet instantly, her nose twitching, muscles tensing. "What is it?" Ronan asked, already reaching for the emergency beacon clipped to his belt. Before the liaison could answer, the window behind them shattered with a sound like a gunshot. Glass exploded inward, a compressed shriek of air and shrapnel. Ronan dove for cover, grabbing the liaison and hauling him behind a bench. Selah didn't duck, she leapt. A streak of metal had cut through the air, aiming straight for Ronan's chest. Selah intercepted it midair with her shoulder. The object bounced off her armored bracer and embedded itself in the wall behind him, a high-velocity spike. Small. Surgical. Quiet. An assassin's tool. Ronan scrambled to his feet, drawing his sidearm. Sayla landed in a crouch, eyes glowing with twin rings of golden light, her claws extended, breath controlled but rapid. The attacker was gone. No signs. Just a ruined window, broken glass, and the smell of ionized air. She had saved him. Again. But this time, it wasn't instinct. It was choice. Security stormed the room in under 20 seconds. Weapons drawn, drones scanning, orders shouted in every language of the summit. The tension was razor thin. When they saw Sayla crouched beside Ronan, claws extended, blood on her bracer from a glancing blow, several guards lifted their rifles. She hissed instinctively, backing toward the corner. Her eyes glowed brighter now, not with fury, but with something that read as fear. Not for herself, but for what she might be forced to do next. She saved my life. Ronan snapped. Stand down! The guards didn't lower their weapons. Protocol dictated that anyone armed near a fallen envoy had to be considered a threat. But Ronan stepped in front of her, shielded her with his body, and barked louder. I said back off. That gave them pause. Enough for the command override from Trell to come through on their comms. Stand down. Pull footage. Lock down all entrances. We've been breached. Ronan turned to Sayla as medical teams rushed in. You good? She nodded once, still crouched, still alert. The weapon, too small for a traditional kill. It was meant to send a message. A warning, Ronan muttered. Or a provocation. 10 minutes later, Chancellor Trell arrived, her face pale, her usual composure cracked. Do you know what this looks like? She hissed as she pulled Ronan aside. Someone just tried to assassinate you in the middle of the bonding period. The Ellerin Council will think it was us trying to wriggle out of the right. It wasn't the Ellerin, Ronan said. That weapon, too precise, too silent. That's black market human tech. Maybe modified AI composite, but definitely not tribal. Sayla joined them then, silent and looming. The alloy was blended. I could smell it. Human alloys laced with synthetic mesh, too light to be local. Trell's eyes narrowed. So someone's playing both sides. Exactly, Ronan said. They want to destabilize the summit. They don't care how. Just as long as we stop trusting each other. Trell rubbed her temples. You're turning this into a spy-net drama. It already is, Ronan shot back. The only reason I'm still standing is because she took the hit meant for me. You want to talk optics? That's your headline. A bonded pair defends each other in the face of sabotage. Trell hesitated, then nodded grimly. We're initiating a full sweep. You two, back to your suite. No media. No statements. Not until we know what we're dealing with. As they walked the quiet corridors back toward the east wing, Sayla finally spoke. You stepped in front of me, she said low. You already stepped in front of me, Ronan replied. Just seemed fair. For the first time, her lips curled, not in a snarl, not a smirk. Just a faint, surprised smile. A flicker of something warmer than duty. You're not prey, she said quietly. Ronan looked over at her. Good, he said. Because I'm tired of being hunted. That night, the embassy fell into a kind of forced calm. External comms were limited. All meetings postponed. Officially, the summit was under re-evaluation due to a minor security concern. But everyone knew the truth. Someone had tried to kill Ronan Vale. Again. Inside the suite, the quiet was almost suffocating. Sayla stood near the window, arms folded, her reflection barely visible in the glass as stormlight rolled across the sky. Her tail flicked slowly behind her, the only sign of her unrest. You haven't moved in over 2 hours, Ronan said from the other side of the room, still dressed, still alert. That normal? She blinked but didn't look away. We meditate after conflict. We recenter instinct before it turns into something else. If we don't... Her voice trailed off. He crossed the floor, grabbed a hydration pack from the console, and tossed one her way. She caught it without turning. I thought you were going to kill those guards, he said. I almost did, she replied, her voice low. They raised their weapons at me. My body moved before I could stop it. If you hadn't stepped in. You didn't. But I would have, she said, finally turning to look at him. And that scares me more than it should. He stared back, studying her face, the sharp features, the delicate fur around her cheeks and jaw, her eyes that never stopped calculating. She wasn't a monster. She was someone trying hard not to become what people already assumed she was. The bond messes with you, doesn't it? He asked. It connects our instincts, she said. Mine are more volatile. Protective. When you're in danger, I feel it before I think about it. So now we're linked, biologically? She gave a slight nod. Yes. But also something deeper. The Viethrel is not just about body. It's about presence. Proximity. Fate. Ronan let that hang in the air before sitting down beside her on the padded bench. Well, for something I didn't sign up for, it's starting to feel less like a mistake. Sayla tilted her head. You don't feel it? I do, he admitted. It's not just instinct. It's awareness. You're not a symbol to me. Not anymore. She was quiet for a moment. Then, softly, there's more. The bond isn't just permanent. It attracts disruption. Those who oppose unity, who profit from chaos, they'll target us more now. Then we stay ahead of them. He stood and walked to the center of the room, placing a hand over the dermal patch on his shoulder where her fangs had entered. They picked the wrong pair to make an example out of. Sayla's eyes softened. Just a little. Agreed. By dawn, the whispers had already begun. In hidden corners of the embassy, down encrypted channels and old diplomatic backdoors, messages passed from hand to hand, some calling it an assassination attempt, others a failed false flag. The few who had seen the evidence firsthand knew better. The sleek metal spike used in the attack hadn't come from any known Ellerin or Concord weapons cache. Someone had designed it to be invisible. Someone with resources and reach. Ronan woke from a brief nap on the couch, the sound of coded taps on the embedded terminal pulling him from light sleep. Sayla was already crouched beside it, one hand on the wall, the other on a touch-sensitive panel. Her claws retracted as she moved with precision. What are you doing? He asked, voice hoarse. Looking, she said. They left traces. Whoever entered the embassy to plant that weapon had to move through maintenance tunnels. Not the main corridors. He pulled on his shirt and crossed the room. And you can track them? Sayla tapped the display, cycling through schematics. The door where the attack came from wasn't opened by force. It was overridden from the inside. Sliced. Surgical. You think someone inside helped them? I know it. She brought up a security feed. A broken loop of static with one frame corrupted. And this is tampered data. A ghost imprint. Not amateur work. Ronan narrowed his eyes. You said the alloy in the weapon smelled human. But this goes deeper. What if this isn't a single faction? She paused. Explain. He stepped beside her and accessed his old military code clearance, still valid, though buried beneath a dozen levels of security. A private channel blinked open. What if it's not Ellerin or Concord? What if it's both? Or neither? A group that doesn't want peace. That feeds off the instability between species. Rogue AI? She asked. Maybe. Mercenaries. Disavowed agents. Private tech brokers who don't want tariffs on war supplies. Anyone who benefits from things falling apart. Sayla's ears flattened. A third ring. Ronan turned to her. What? That's what we call them. The ones outside both of our worlds. Neither bonded to tribe nor bound by council. The disillusioned. The forgotten. The ones who whisper to the void and sell weapons for silence. He exhaled. That would explain a lot. They exchanged a long look. No words passed, but the meaning was clear. They weren't just dealing with a failed summit. They were standing in the eye of a storm someone else had created, and if they didn't find the source soon, The winds would rip everything apart. Ronan grabbed a secure data chip and slid it into the terminal. Then we get proof. Sayla nodded once. And we bring it to someone who can't be bought. The rogue ship docked on the lower ring was sleek, silent, and wrong. No diplomatic tags. No beacon pings. Its matte black hull seemed to drink in the emergency lights blinking around it, and the heat from its engines was still fresh when Ronan and Sayla found it. They had reached the bay through a side corridor not listed on any public schematic, an old emergency access tunnel buried beneath overlapping updates in the station's layout. Someone had wanted it forgotten. Too bad Ronan had remembered it from his military days. The panel guarding the bay's entrance had been sliced open, wires exposed like tendons, still warm to the touch. Sayla crouched near it, nose twitching as she sniffed the air. They were here, she murmured. 3, maybe 4. One of them synthetic. Android? Ronan asked, checking the charge on his sidearm. She shook her head. Biofused. Human base. Modified tissue. Scent doesn't stay long, burns out. He cursed under his breath. We're dealing with serious operators. Sayla stepped to the edge of the entry ramp, tail swaying slowly. Let me go first. Because of your claws? Because if they see you first, they might shoot. He didn't argue. The hatch opened without resistance. No alarms. No challenge protocols. It wanted to be discovered. Inside was a stripped command deck minimal interface, with one wall of hardened data cores flickering faint blue. The terminal glowed faintly in the dark, a heartbeat in code. Sayla approached the command station while Ronan pulled the cover off a side crate, exposing a destroyed security drone. Looks like they disabled one of our eyes before this even began, he muttered. Or used it, Sayla replied, tracing her claws lightly across the terminal. This isn't just storage. This system's been intercepting communications, summit transmissions, diplomatic channels, even AI routing protocols. Live? No. Bounced through layered proxies. But it was listening. And worse, it was sending. Ronan's face darkened. Fabricated orders. False pings. They were feeding every side misinformation. She tapped through encrypted logs. Her golden eyes narrowed as she spoke. They created an echo chamber. Amplifying fear, rerouting anger. Deliberate chaos. He inserted a secure chip into the terminal's side. We copy everything. We get it out. Sayla nodded. Then we burn the ship. He arched an eyebrow. Your people always this thorough? My people believe if you cut out a rot, you salt the wound after. The transfer bar ticked upward, slow and steady. Ronan scanned the dark corners of the ship one last time. That's when he saw the body. Slumped near the exit bay, half hidden in shadow, a synthetic human, expression locked in a grimace, pale skin already graying from internal toxin. Dead? He called out. Swallowed a kill pill when things went south. Sayla joined him, crouching beside the corpse. She sniffed once, then nodded. Coward's end. Ronan turned back to the terminal as the transfer completed. We've got what we need, he said. Now let's see who wants peace enough to help us use it. Back in the embassy, the mood had shifted. The halls were quieter, but not calmer, like a theater in the moments before the curtain rises, where no one breathes too loud for fear of drawing attention. Everyone could feel it now. The tension wasn't just cultural anymore. It wasn't about customs or old wounds. It was something more sinister threading through the station's foundations. Ronan and Sayla didn't return to Chancellor Trell or any of the Concord staff. Instead, they took the long route to the archival wing. Buried behind reinforced doors and lined with outdated terminals and physical backups, the old archives were rarely used anymore. Which was exactly why Ronan trusted them. No AI surveillance. No uplinks. Just silence and cold screens waiting to be woken up. Sayla paced while he uploaded the files, her tail flicking sharply every time the data screen flashed. We shouldn't wait, she said. They'll erase this if they know we have it. That's why we don't tell them, Ronan said, his fingers dancing across the console. Not yet. File by file, the sabotage was laid bare, intercepted commands rerouted through hidden relays, forged documents bearing the digital fingerprints of high-ranking officials, falsified voice clips sent to both Concord and Ellerin delegations stoking fears of betrayal. And in between it all, a web of false narratives. Someone had been orchestrating this from the shadows for years. Sayla leaned over his shoulder, studying the alien script as it auto-translated. These aren't just human commands, she murmured. Some of this is Ellerin. Old dialects. Clan code from before the separation. And this, Ronan said, highlighting another section, is military-grade encryption. Human black ops, ghost protocols. This was never meant to be found. She looked at him. It's a coalition. Or worse, he said. It's not a faction. It's people from both sides. A third ring, like you said. The disillusioned. The ones who want peace to fail. A long silence stretched between them. Then Sayla placed a clawed hand gently on his wounded shoulder. Her touch was soft, a whisper of warmth. They will come for us now, she said. Not as diplomats. As targets. Let them, Ronan said. But first we go public. She narrowed her eyes. Your council will silence you. He pulled the chip from the terminal and slid it into a hidden slot in his boot. Then we don't ask permission. We ask someone who can't be bribed. Sayla tilted her head. The AI. The emissary faction, Ronan confirmed. They've had access to every channel since the summit began. If anyone can confirm the tampering, it's them. And if they're clean, they'll help, Sayla finished. They turned toward the exit together. But just before reaching the doors, she touched his arm again, firmer this time. You're not what I expected, she said. He gave a tired smile. Same to you? No, she said, her voice quieter now. I expected a man afraid of claws. Not one who stands between them and the fire. And I expected a bite to mean pain, he replied. Not protection. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, together, they stepped into the corridor, carrying proof of betrayal, unsure if the very ones they meant to save would destroy them for having it. The orbital council chamber wasn't built for comfort. It was designed to intimidate. A massive circular space suspended high above the summit floor, its platforms floated in perfect symmetry. Cool metal, shifting light, and the endless hum of data streams surrounded everything. And at the center of it all hovered the AI emissary, an ever-turning prism of light and code, its form refracting messages in dozens of languages simultaneously. Ronan and Sayla approached the platform under watchful eyes. A human delegate on the far ring whispered to an assistant. Two Ellerin advisors narrowed their eyes in unspoken warning. Even the conquered delegates, the neutral trade species from the outer rings, watched with folded arms and tense postures. The AI emissary paused its slow rotation when Ronan held up the chip. We have data, he said. Undeniable proof that the summit has been manipulated by rogue agents outside of any official chain of command. Forged communications. Coordinated sabotage. Unauthorized signal spikes. The prism hovered closer. Upload for review? Sayla stepped forward. This is not conjecture. It is traced. Layered. It carries your own signal stamps, diverted. Altered. Ronan inserted the chip into the terminal before him, and the chamber's lights dimmed as the AI began parsing. Seconds stretched into minutes. The delegates grew restless. A soft hum began to echo through the walls, punctuated by occasional flashes of raw data across the holographic display above them. Ronan watched Sayla. She didn't blink. Her hands were at her sides open, showing restraint even when her instincts no doubt screamed otherwise. Finally, the AI's voice returned. Confirmed, it said. The chamber erupted. Shouts. Demands. Accusations. A Concord delegate rose to his feet, face red, calling for an emergency adjournment. An Ellerin elder hissed something sharp in her native tongue, her tail lashing behind her. The conquered remained silent, but even they leaned forward, eyes sharp. Enough! The AI boomed. The chamber silenced at once. These findings suggest a sustained campaign of disinformation by parties unknown, individuals and groups working against the summit's goals. Their purpose appears to be systemic destabilization through fear and miscommunication. Ronan stepped forward. Then let's name it. Let's show it. The AI considered. I can assist. But the release of this data to the wider summit requires a transparency directive approved by a majority vote. Sayla's ears flicked. Then bring it to vote. You will need to speak, the AI replied. Both of you. You are the heart of the incident. The bond must be explained. Ronan's throat tightened. You want us to become propaganda. I want you to become proof, the AI corrected, that the summit can survive sabotage if it is grounded in truth. Ronan glanced at Sayla. Her gaze met his, steady and unshaken. You ready for this? He asked quietly. She nodded. I was born for war. But I'd rather fight for peace. Ronan turned back to the council. Then let's give them something real. The center of the council chamber dimmed as the speaking platform illuminated beneath Ronan and Sayla's feet. 100 floating delegate platforms surrounded them like a ring of judgment. Above, the treaty dome rotated, its projections displaying ancient accords, faded alliances, and fractured trust. The room wasn't just watching them. It was weighing them. A voice echoed from the rim, Protocol Officer Bryn, a neutral AI moderator. The bonded pair of Ronan Vale and Sayla of Clan Tyrene have requested the right to address the Council on the matter of transparency, sabotage, and the legitimacy of their bond. Do they have leave to speak? Lights blinked one by one across the chamber. Green. 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 One yellow. No reds. Permission granted. Ronan stepped forward first, the bright projection of the spike weapon appearing behind him, floating in midair for all to see. 3 nights ago, someone tried to kill me. Not with bombs, not with drones, but with precision, in silence, in a way that couldn't be traced. That attack didn't just threaten my life. It threatened this summit. It was meant to push us back into suspicion, into separation. He paused, scanning the room. It would have worked, if I hadn't been bitten. A rustle of murmurs. He smiled grimly. The irony isn't lost on me. What should have been a diplomatic disaster became the one thing that kept me alive. Sayla didn't just save me during the attack. She saved the truth. She saw what was happening before any of us were willing to admit it. Sayla stepped beside him. The projection changed, now showing transmission logs, corrupted pings, falsified orders. Our bond was not planned, she said, her voice firm, accent sharp but measured. It was instinct. But I chose to honor it. Because I saw a man who didn't run when fangs bared. I saw someone who faced the unknown without reaching for a weapon. She looked at Ronan, just briefly, before addressing the council again. My people have lost many things. We've been called beasts. We've been treated as weapons. But this man stood in front of rifles drawn on me. He put his life where his mouth was. And when the claws were aimed elsewhere, I stood in front of him. Ronan nodded slowly. We're not asking you to understand the bond. But we are asking you to stop pretending that this is just some incident. We found the ones pulling the strings. We have the proof. And we're telling you now, if we hide it, if we pretend this never happened, they win. The lights above them pulsed softly, syncing with the rising murmur of voices among the platforms. Then Sayla's voice cut through again. If this council means to build peace, then build it with truth. Not ceremony. Not performance. But choice. Ronan turned back to the AI prism. Initiate the vote. The chamber dimmed as the vote began. Each delegate sat in silence, surrounded by floating consoles displaying the compiled evidence, data logs, intercepted messages, voice forgeries, attack schematics, and a model prediction built by the AI emissary. It showed what would have happened had the sabotage gone unnoticed. By day 3, scattered border skirmishes. By day 10, Total trade collapse between 3 major sectors. By day 30, open war. The projections flickered like ghosts in the air above the speaking platform, and no one dared look away. Protocol Officer Brin's voice echoed once more. Delegates, prepare your votes. This motion calls for 1. Full public dissemination of sabotage evidence, 2. Recognition of the bond as a legitimate cultural event under Alliance protection, and 3. Permanent establishment of a cross-faction intelligence alliance to hunt the remaining saboteurs. Lights began blinking around the chamber. One by one, green signals flared into life. Human platform, green. Ellerin clan tier, green. The conquered traders, green. Even the skeptical border syndicates flicked to green after a long, trembling hesitation. No reds. Just one lone yellow. Then, motion passed. The chamber filled with a strange hush. Not silence. Not noise. A collective breath held, and then exhaled. Ronan closed his eyes for just a moment. It was done. But as he opened them again, he didn't feel relief. He felt the weight of what came next. The AI emissary floated lower, its light dimming to a soft blue. Dissemination protocols initialized. Evidence will be released to all member networks within the hour. Safeguards installed. Sayla turned to him as the room began to stir with movement again, delegates leaning toward one another, new alliances whispering into motion. You spoke like a war chief, she said softly. Even without claws. He smirked. And you looked every one of them in the eye without blinking. That is how we show strength. They stepped off the platform together, and for once, no one flinched at their closeness. No one questioned the bond. No one called it theatrics. Trell approached as they exited the central floor, her expression unreadable for once. You just rewrote the rules of diplomacy, she said. And probably a few laws. Ronan shrugged. Then someone needed to. Trell gave Sayla a respectful nod. You didn't just bite an envoy, you made a legend. Sayla's tail flicked once, amused. Let's hope it survives the next assassination attempt. Behind them, the projection dome shifted. The old treaties faded. And in their place, a new clause bloomed in pale gold. One line. Simple. Recognition of cross-species bonds as protected by interfaction law, when formed by mutual consent and witnessed in good faith. It didn't erase the past. But it marked a future. By the time Ronan and Sayla returned to their suite, the world outside had already changed. Summit feeds pulsed with updates. Commentary panels, analyst drones, and policy advisors picked apart every line of their speech, every nuance of their shared glance, every trace of emotion in Sayla's voice as she described the bond. Across 3 systems, the phrase, clawed by diplomacy, trended on social media. Most mocked it. Some revered it. All repeated it. But here, in this small corner of the floating city, away from glowing panels and judgy delegates, the silence finally felt real. Not empty. Earned. Ronan tossed his jacket over the back of the chair and collapsed onto the couch with a groan. Remind me why we didn't fake a fever and hide in medbay? Sayla, who'd been quiet since they left the council chamber, moved across the room with a slow grace. She was still in her ceremonial mantle, the crimson and silver threading glowing faintly in the dim light. Because either of us runs, she said. Even when we want to. He laughed under his breath. That's becoming a problem. She tilted her head. You would rather I had walked away? Bitten you, started a crisis, then vanished? He looked at her, eyes steady. Maybe at first. Now. He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Now I'm starting to think you biting me might have been the only honest thing that's happened since I got here. Sayla's expression softened. A flicker of something, almost vulnerability, crossed her face before she sat beside him, close enough that their arms brushed. They want us to be a symbol, she murmured. Proof that alliance can survive instinct. We are, he said. But that doesn't mean it's not also something else. She turned her golden eyes toward him. You mean real? He nodded. The firelight from the window danced across her face, catching the delicate contours of her features, feline, yet unmistakably expressive. The gray fur along her cheeks rippled faintly as her ears angled back in thought. "I never meant for this bond to happen," she said. "But if I had to choose again, I wouldn't change it." Ronan blinked. "Even after all this? I have fought in 3 campaigns," she said. "Led ambushes. Buried friends. I know what it means to lose. But today, for once, I stood beside someone not because I was ordered to, but because I chose to." He looked down at their hands. His fingers, her claws. So different, but they'd bled for the same thing. She followed his gaze. Gently, she placed her hand over his. "I still hear your heartbeat when you're not in the room," she said quietly. He leaned in, resting his forehead against hers. "And I feel it," he whispered, "when you're near." There was no kiss. No theatrics. Just 2 warriors, finally at rest, beneath the noise. The official ceremony took place 3 days later atop the observatory platform, a space usually reserved for elite receptions and starlight councils. Now, it was stripped bare of pretense. No reporters. No projection drones. No crowds. Just a handful of key witnesses: Trell, the Ellerin elder Sayla once clashed with during the summit's first hour, a few silent advisors from neutral systems, and the AI emissary, manifested as a quiet prism hovering at eye level, its light dulled to a respectful glow. Sayla stood tall beneath the open sky, dressed not in formal regalia, but in her own mantle, handwoven threads of shadow gray and storm silver laced with 2 interlocked symbols, her clan's, and Ronan's diplomatic crest. The clasp that held it together was carved bone, simple but weighty. An offering. A marker of choice. Ronan wore nothing special. Plain black. No medals. No rank. Just himself. It felt right. The Ellerin elder stepped forward, his hands outstretched, holding the ceremonial clasp. He said nothing, only nodded once, to her, then to Ronan. Sayla accepted it without hesitation. Then she turned, extended it in both hands, and offered it to him. Ronan didn't reach for it immediately. He looked at her, really looked. Not the fierce warrior who had once lunged across the table to bite him, not the feline emissary who faced down diplomats and saboteurs alike, but the person who had grown with him through chaos and silence alike. "I came here to prevent a war," he said, voice low. "And I found someone I'd fight one for." Her ears twitched, and she whispered, "You always had claws. You just never knew who to use them for." He smiled and took the clasp, fastening it to the front of her mantle, securing it in place. It was a small act. No fireworks. No music. But when she stepped forward and rested her forehead against his, the moment felt infinite. A vow made not in words but in presence. The wind whispered across the stones of the observatory. The twin suns of Ilaris cast long shadows beneath a silver cloud sky. And the galaxy, for just a breath of time, paused. Later, after the witnesses had left, and only the AI remained, the prism flickered once. Union recorded. Treaty clause updated. Bond acknowledged. Then it dimmed and floated away, leaving them alone. Sayla stood beside him beneath the stars, her tail brushing gently against the floor. "Not long ago," she said, "this world tried to swallow both of us. But here we are. Still standing." Ronan turned to her, heart steady. "Still choosing," he corrected. She reached for his hand again. This time, he didn't hesitate. Word of the bond ceremony spread, even without broadcasts. It leaked quietly, carried not by media but by whispers among diplomats, soldiers, and citizens watching the summit with guarded hope. Screens displayed a new treaty clause, newly ratified across dozens of worlds, acknowledging voluntary cross-species bonding rights as legally protected under galactic law. Some celebrated. Some scoffed. Others feared what it meant. But no one could ignore it. Sayla and Ronan had become something more than names on a report. They were a symbol. Of diplomacy earned. Of trust forged. Of a future not built in war rooms but in moments of silent, sincere choice. And it was exhausting. Within hours, both were back in separate meetings, Ronan briefing the Concord on strategic reforms, Sayla standing before her own council to explain, again, what the bond meant. Not just politically, but personally. They still don't understand, she said that night, standing by the wide window of their suite. They think I lost control. That I let instinct win. Ronan sipped from a steaming cup and sat down on the couch. They don't know you like I do. She looked at him. What do you know? He smiled. That you saved me 3 times before anyone else even thought I was worth protecting. That you stood by me when your own people were ready to exile you. And that when the whole galaxy looked at you like a threat, you didn't flinch. You walked into the light anyway. Her ears flattened slightly, not in shame, but in quiet emotion. Her voice dropped. You make me feel seen, Ronan. Not studied. Not analyzed. Just known. He stood and crossed to her, placing a hand on her waist. Her body leaned into his before she even realized it. Then let me say it clearly, he murmured. You are not my scandal. You're not my shield. You're my choice. She pressed her forehead to his again, breathing him in slowly. The bond between them wasn't just instinct anymore. It pulsed now with something deeper, anchored not in ritual, but in trust. In the dark quiet of the room, she whispered, And you are mine. He drew her close, his voice barely audible. Then let's face what comes next together. The embassy never truly slept, but the rhythm had changed. Security patrols doubled, not in hostility, but caution. Not to monitor delegates, but to shield them. For the first time in weeks, no one was watching Ronan and Sayla like they might snap. Now they were being watched like they might lead. And with leadership came responsibility. That morning, Ronan was pulled into a classified session deep beneath the main council chamber, where AI representatives and select human and Ellerin officials gathered to form the foundation of a new initiative, the Interfaction Intelligence Network. Its purpose: locate and dismantle the remaining nodes of the Sabotage Coalition. We don't need another spy program, Ronan said bluntly as a map of galactic sectors flickered before them. We need a truth engine. Something that roots out manipulation before it metastasizes. Trell, seated at the far end of the table, nodded. Agreed. You'll help shape the protocols. I don't want to run it, Ronan added. I want to hunt with it. There was a pause. Then, a silent consensus. Ronan had seen the shadows. And now, he was the one best positioned to walk into them. Meanwhile, Sayla wasn't idle. She stood before Ellerin culture councils, challenging long-held beliefs with quiet conviction. She laid out the truth of the bond, not the ritual itself, but the honor in choosing to uphold it. They see me now as something new, she told Ronan later that day, pacing their suite, tail twitching with thought. Not quite warrior. Not quite envoy. They don't know what to do with me. Good, he said. Make them uncomfortable. Make them think. She smirked. You always know how to compliment a clawed woman. He stepped behind her, slipping his arms around her waist. I know how to recognize strength when I see it. She leaned into him slightly, relaxing for the first time that day. They asked me to serve as a cross-cultural liaison. Between Ellerin and humans? She nodded. Between everyone. Ronan exhaled slowly. Then you'd better warn them. You don't play politics. She turned in his arms, golden eyes glowing faintly. No. But I protect what I believe in. Their foreheads touched again. The heartbeat between them familiar now, synchronized. 2 warriors. 2 voices. 1 mission. By the end of the week, Ronan and Sayla were no longer just political outliers or cultural anomalies. They were agents of momentum. And momentum could be dangerous. It earned them attention, the kind that watched from behind shaded lenses and untagged calm lines. The kind that didn't blink when the lights dimmed or the station shifted a few degrees off course. The kind that planned for the worst, and hoped the worst was still coming. Ronan noticed it first in the way his clearance code stopped working in certain embassy wings. Then in the sudden silence from two allied sectors that had previously offered to contribute intel resources. Sayla felt it too, in the way council meetings began to close without notice, or how fellow warriors from her clan bowed too quickly, spoke too little. Something was coiling beneath the surface again. On the 10th night after the vote, the warning came. A coded message blinked into their suite's private terminal. No sender. Just a data stream and a location ping, a defunct cargo bay near the station's underbelly. Marked. Sector H7. Cleanse before dawn. Sayla read it over Ronan's shoulder. They're wiping evidence, she said immediately. Scrubbing whatever traces remain of the rogue network. Which means someone's getting nervous, Ronan muttered, grabbing his sidearm. She was already pulling on her bracer armor, her cloak coiled tight around her shoulders. If we wait, it'll be gone. They didn't wait. They moved like ghosts, slipping through the eastern auxiliary corridors where only repair drones wandered. Sayla led, silent, eyes scanning for movement beyond the obvious. Her instincts hummed through her limbs like low static. Ronan followed, his presence tight and controlled, reading the angles, calculating fallback positions. H7 was colder than it should have been. The doors were already half open when they reached it, like someone expected them, or had just left. Inside was a shell of a storage hub, dimly lit and littered with empty crates and scattered tech remains. But in the far corner, a portable server core blinked with a single active light. Ronan approached carefully. Tripwired? Sayla sniffed the air. No. Worse. Laced. He froze. Laced how? With a dispersal agent. You touch it, it spreads through the vents, burns the data, scrambles organics. No evidence. No bodies. He swore. They're erasing the past like it was never here. Then we copy fast, she said, moving to the side and pulling a lead from her gauntlet. She connected it to the core and began streaming data directly into her neural interface. I can hold it in my implant. Not long. Ronan kept watch at the door, every nerve alert. The silence was too thick. Too clean. I don't like this, he murmured. Just as the final 2% of the download ticked over, the lights cut. Complete darkness. Then a voice. You should have stopped while the galaxy still believed your little story. Sayla's eyes flared golden in the dark. Ronan raised his pistol. A figure stepped into view. Cloaked. Unmarked. Another followed. Then another. 3 shadows. No insignia. No loyalty. Third ring, Sayla growled. The ones behind the strings. And now we cut them, Ronan replied, steady. The first shot echoed like thunder in the dark. The first shot grazed the crate beside Ronan, burning a line through the metal. He ducked low, rolled behind cover, and fired twice, measured bursts. One hit a cloaked figure square in the chest. No blood. Synthetic. Clones, Sayla hissed, crouched near the server, claws extended and bristling. Cheap ones. Disposable. 2 more surged forward. Ronan took one down with a plasma bolt to the head. Sayla launched into the other, full force, teeth bared, claws slicing through armor and bone. The fight was quick. Brutal. Efficient. When the last one fell, twitching and lifeless, the server core gave a final blink and shut down completely. Sayla staggered back, panting. It's gone. But I have enough. You okay? Ronan moved toward her, wiping blood off his brow. She nodded once, jaw tight. They knew we'd come. This wasn't about cleanup. No, Ronan muttered, looking at the fallen bodies. It was a message. We're not done. They left H7 with the stolen data burned into Sayla's neural core and blood, some of it synthetic, some not, drying on their clothes. Back in the suite, the doors locked behind them. The embassy now felt colder, more alert, like the structure itself had realized war was circling its hull. Trell called within the hour. Her face appeared on the terminal screen, eyes tired but sharp. There was another attack. On the Concord outpost at Arsene 6. False orders sent. 1 cruiser destroyed. They're testing the fractures, Ronan said. We can't stop it all, Trell admitted. But we can name it. Expose it. And how long until they spin it again? Sayla asked from behind Ronan, voice low and clear. Trell met her gaze. Not long. Which is why the Council has approved a full release. Ronan blinked. A what? The files. The Bond story. Everything. All of it goes public in 48 hours. Galaxy-wide transparency. No edits. No filters. You're no longer figureheads. You're the firebreak. Sayla looked to Ronan. He didn't need time to decide. Then let them see the truth. The chamber was quiet. Not out of fear, but out of weight. The kind of silence that settles over a world waiting for truth it can't take back. Ronan stood at the center of the broadcast deck, a thin ring of lights casting a soft glow around him. No podium. No scripts. No advisors. Just the feed, linked to every allied world, every open frequency, every screen tuned to the summit's final report. Sayla stood beside him. She had chosen to wear her mantle again, the silver and storm gray symbol of their bond gleaming faintly across her shoulder. Her expression was calm, but her golden eyes burned. The AI emissary's voice crackled softly through the intercom. Transmission link is stable. All systems ready? Begin when ready. Ronan didn't clear his throat or rehearse his words. He simply spoke. My name is Ronan Vale. You know me now. Not as a diplomat. Not as a warrior. But as someone who stood at the center of something we weren't supposed to survive. He looked into the lens. They tried to make us enemies. To feed us fear. To convince us that instinct, history, and difference made peace impossible. But I was bitten, literally, and I didn't run. I listened. And what I found wasn't a threat. He gestured to Sayla. She stepped forward without hesitation. I am Sayla of Clan Tyrene, she said. And when I bit Ronan Vale, I did not know what would follow. What I know now is this: bonding does not mean control. It means choosing, again and again, to stand beside someone, even when it would be easier to walk away. The screen behind them flared to life. Evidence. Images. Logs. Schematics. The face of a clone from the H7 encounter. The data trails of sabotage. Everything. And finally, footage from the moment Sayla lunged across the negotiating table. The room, frozen in shock. The bite. The aftermath. Ronan's voice, trembling but steady. I didn't come here to posture. I came to keep us from bleeding. The feed returned to them. Ronan's voice was quiet now. We didn't ask for this. But we won't run from it either. Sayla reached out, took his hand, no hesitation. What we built in that silence between war and peace, that's what we're offering the galaxy now. Not perfection, but a beginning. The screen dimmed. The broadcast ended. And across dozens of systems, people didn't cheer. They didn't panic. They simply watched and thought. Back in their suite, Ronan and Sayla stood in a lingering quiet. It's done, he said. No, she replied. It started. He looked at her, and this time, he kissed her, firm, grounded, and real. No ceremony. No summit. Just a bond, chosen again, stronger than war. And it would hold. Because they would. Together.